would you like to talk on PMA activities?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah, that's good.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
please.
so good evening, everybody, and welcome to all, and especially Vasudevji, the speaker of the day today. I think we are going to have very interesting discussion on this very interesting topic. I'm particularly very much interested, right from the time when I, uh, got little synopsis from him about the program when I was creating a flyer. Talking about PMA, most of the people who are present on this call, I'm sure we all know about different verticals that we have. Today's program is arranged by COE Quality and EHS. Uh, Yesterday only we had one very interesting meeting of this COE, our internal meeting, and we have decided on range of topics. So in times to come, I think we are going to have very interesting programs specifically directed towards the manufacturing industry. Today's program is also one of them. Uh, I'm sure there is a lot to take away from this program. Uh, in recent times, PMA has also started, tying up with a lot of educational institutes as well as some of the industries. Uh, we have started, activities to start the student chapter because, as they say, catch them when they are young. So it is the right phase to really get students interested in PMA because in future they are going to be professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs in their respective professional world. So I think it's a great initiative that PMA has started. We have also tied up with one bakery manufacturing unit who has started a certificate course on baconology. Uh, the first batch is already over. It was a very successful batch, and the second one is starting right after Diwali. I have shared that communication in some of the limited groups, also on PMA website or PMA's LinkedIn page. So anybody who wants to, create a career in bakery domain, which is very exciting industry, by the way, it has great potential. In Pune, like city, also, although we have about 700 organized and unorganized bakeries, there is still a potential to absorb another 500 or so. So that's one of the studies which has said. So it's a very exciting industry. So if anybody is interested in your circles, please communicate with one of the PMA officials. That will be very interesting. So with that brief on PMA and recent updates on PMA, I'll give back to Nand Kumarji.
Yeah. Thank you, Biman sir. So, as Biman sir has said, this is a program on behalf of one of the vertical of Pune Management Association, that is on quality, environment and health and safety. So basically, we work as this COE group on quality work for training, delivering training, workshop, organizing workshops, and then consultation about various domains of quality. And today we have a great experience speaker, Mr. Vasudev Danay. He is basically 1986 graduate of Electronics and Telecommunication batch BE, and also having post graduation in MMS degree. So he has got a wide experience in engineering, project management, infrastructure management, R&D, product development, and quality. And he has also worked in Indian as well as global environment. Basically, outside India, he has worked in North America, Netherlands, Germany, Japan, and also he has worked with the uh, various industries like Emerson Group, Honeywell Automations, then Siemens India, and finally, after his 34 years of service, he retired as a VP Quality from Emerson Network Power Group. He was a VP Quality for Asia Pacific region. So, such a great speaker, experienced speaker we are having. And today's topic is basically on the uh, problem solving or a root cause analysis being used to be used for this from Mr. Vasudev Danaj. So, I request to take over Vasudevji for this session. Thank you.
My screen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So once again, good evening. And these are the topics which I am going to be talking today very briefly because I have only 40-45 minutes. And normally I take about 4 days full-fledged training course on this. I have subdivided them into 3 categories, you can see. So first category is what we call basic quality tools, but I have taken liberty to rearrange them a little bit. The middle category is the tools and techniques which are used for problem solving, root cause analysis, and failure analysis. And the one on the right side are lean or continuous improvement tools. So with that, I will straight away jump into the first one, run chart. And all these tools are very interrelated. And whether we use Six Sigma or whether we use 8D, the basic foundational philosophy behind use of those tools is DMAC. And DMAC stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And all these various tools are either used, that means use means either you create or refer in one of these phases of the DMAC. And they are highly interrelated. It is very difficult to segregate them from each other. With that, I'll start on run chart. So the run chart is used to plot any parameter or variable or your KPI which you are measuring, and your x-axis therefore is always a time scale. That time scale can be in seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, or months. And y-axis is the parameter which you are measuring. Now, if you plot, then it will look something like what is on the left-hand side. But just a plot is not good enough to tell you whether what you are measuring is good, bad, or ugly. So you definitely would like to add some more details to that. And typically, we add two data points. One is your average of the measurement, and second is goal. So once you have the goal line, you can compare whether you are doing good, bad, or ugly. So that is about run chart. The next one is control chart, and it evolves from run chart. So actually, run chart is not, if you study a classical text of 7 quality tools, run chart does not come as one of the quality tools. They directly start from control chart. Control chart is nothing but you add your control limits, that is lower control limit and upper control limit, to your run chart, and it becomes a control chart. Now, these control limits are coming from your historical data or historical measurements, and they are actually lower and control limits of what you call in technical terms the normal variation of your process. Yeah, that means anything going beyond that is typically sign of what we call in technical terms special cause variation. Now, these control limits are not cast in stone. You have to review them periodically, because as you take continuous improvement actions, your normal variations of the process will reduce over a period of time. And as you can see here, your process is now reducing, or the variations in the process are reducing, and then you need to tighten your UCL and LCL. You cannot keep them same. So this is about control chart, and I'll move to the next one, which is called a check sheet. Now, check sheet is used for counting something in real time, because when you are counting in real time, you cannot have the final count until your counting is complete. So either you can use tick marks, or you can use what is typically used in statistics, where count of 4 is used by drawing vertical lines, and the fifth count we use a strike through line or the hash mark, and that gives you a count of 5. So you use this check sheet for counting in real time, and at the end of the counting you can have a total of that. There is another format of check sheet which is used for sort of ticking off when certain activity is done. And I like to always give an example of the check sheet which is used by housekeeping. Typically, if you go to any well-maintained establishment, in the toilet on the back side of the door, housekeeping will have a check sheet, and there will be a frequency, and the housekeeping staff has to either check and sign. And he does not only check and sign once he cleans, he has to complete a lot of activities like whether all lights are working, whether the soap bottle is filled, whether the dustbins are empty, whether all the toilet papers are there. So you will find at least there will be 15, 20 checks which he has to do. And typically in a busy establishment, it could be once an hour, or if it is an office environment, it could be twice or thrice a day. So these are the uses of a check sheet. With that, I will move to histogram. So histogram typically looks like a bar graph, but there is an important difference between bar graph and histograph. Bar graph is used to depict the actual value, whereas histogram is used to depict frequency distribution. So on the left hand side, you will see a table where there are 5 sets, and each set is a data range instead of a data point. So the first, you can see it's a data range from, let's say, 10 to 19. The next one is 20 to 29, and so on and so forth. And the last column tells you the frequency. That means number of data points which fall in that data set. So this frequency distribution is for the examination marks. That means 3 students have scored between 10 to 19. 6 students have scored between 20 to 29, and so on and so forth. And when you plot this data, what you get is histograph. So that's the difference between bar graph and histogram, though it looks similar. The next tool is Pareto. In a slang language or colloquial language, we many times call it as 80-20 rule. So this is named after an Italian economist who discovered this phenomenon in 1930s or 40s. What he discovered is he saw a pattern in the wealth which was being held by the population in Italy at that time, that 20% of the people are holding 80% of the wealth and vice versa. And what he found is this is true about many other distribution or many other phenomena. And this need not be always 80-20 perfectly. It can be 30-70. It depends on the distribution of data. So what it means is 20% of the effort are responsible for the 80% of the effect. Or if you are using this principle for cause and effect, when you do the failure analysis, 20% of the defects are caused by 80% of the causes and vice versa. So the plot, when you plot these causes and the effect, the graph looks like something on the right side. And the use of this is, see, nobody has unlimited resources. Resources can be people, time, money. So you need to focus your efforts, which will give you maximum bang for the buck, or it will give you immediate results. So you would like to focus your efforts on those causes which are contributing highest to the effects. Now, this Pareto which you see is drawn based on what is called as number of incidences or causes. There is another way to draw a Pareto, which is called as cost Pareto. Now, if you see the cost impact of the causes, the graph or the Pareto may not be exactly same. So you also draw, or it is worthwhile to draw a Pareto of the cost impact, and you may like to focus your efforts based on cost Pareto. Yeah, so there are two ways to draw the Pareto. Next one is scatter diagram, and in our Excel terminology we also call it as XY plot or XY relationship. So the graph on the left hand side tells you that there is a positive correlation between X and Y variable. The graph in the middle shows you that there is a negative correlation between X and Y parameter. And the graph on the right hand side shows that there is no correlation between X and Y parameter. Now, important point to note is difference between correlation and causality. Correlation and causality are two different things. Because there is a positive correlation, we cannot say that X is causing Y or Y is causing X. To prove causality, there are different tools and techniques. One of them is Ishikawa diagram, or another one is design of experiment. Only those tools can prove that there is a cause and effect relationship between the two. To give one very good example is, suppose you plot a graph of cells of ice cream and cells of sunglasses, you will get a graph something like this. But that does not mean ice cream sale or increase of ice cream sale is causing increase of sales in sunglasses. Yeah, both are independent of each other, and the root cause of both is actually temperature. Yeah, or if you plot a graph on a very long period, it could be discretionary income. As does this discretionary income of people increase, there will be people will spend more money in buying ice cream or buying sunglasses, because these are directly related to discretionary income of the people. Next one is stratification. Now, for stratification, there is no single format. What stratification means is, you are free to use different tools and techniques to slice and dice and to look at your data from different angles, different perspectives, till you find some kind of pattern in that data or some kind of story emerges from data. So the best example currently I can give is the CoWIN app, in which you can look at data in so many different ways, which government or the IAS officers who are running this program would like to see data in multiple ways to take further action. So you can see the data from first dose, second dose, male, female, different states, different districts, whether you are doing Covaxin or Sputnik or the other vaccine. So then they can see how much demand will be there for second dose for different vaccine, which districts are lagging, which states are lagging, whether which age population is lagging, and where they need to focus their efforts. Yeah. So this is what is called stratification of the data. With this, I have finished the first leg or the left portion, and I will move to the middle portion. And these are the tools, techniques which are used for root cause analysis or failure analysis. So the first one is called cause and effect diagram. It is also called as fishbone diagram because it looks like a fishbone, or it is also named as Ishikawa diagram based on the inventor. And the way you use it is on the right hand side or at the head of the fish, you write down what is your problem or what is the effect, and then classify all probable causes which will lead to this effect. And all these probable causes can be classified into 6 main categories, which are also called as 6 M's. So it could be either because of measurement system, it could be because of the materials which we are using, it could be because of the manpower or environment, or also called mother nature, or method or the SOP which we are using, and the last one is machines. And we are free to then do sub classifications under these 6 main classifications. What is important is not to miss out anything. That means if there is a probable cause, no matter how rare that phenomenon can occur, it is important to jot down. And I like to give an example of our Moore's law. If there is a something can fail, it is better you pick up that and address that irrespective of what is the probability of that failure. Yeah. And sometimes also it is difficult. People debate about whether it will go under this category or that category. My advice is don't worry about that, whether it should go under this category or that category. What is important is to capture each and every probable cause. That is more important. The next one is 5i analysis. And the example or the few terminologies which I would like to explain is what is given on the right hand side. So this is an example of when we go to a doctor, we tell doctor, various things, that I have headache, my nose is running, I have a body pain. These are all symptoms. Yeah? The problem is actually the fever. Yeah? And there is a difference between problem and the cause. The cause is actually infection, because of which you have a fever. And because we have a fever, we have different symptoms. So unless you treat, firstly, unless you find out what the cause is, what infection it is, yeah, whether it is dengue or malaria or typhoid, you cannot treat it. So these are some of the terminologies which are used when we talk about root cause analysis. And from the cause, I will now explain what is root cause. So when something fails, in technical terminology, we call it an incident. Okay? And to give an example, let's say a circuit has failed. So that's an incident. When we ask a second question, why the circuit failed, we get the answer as the power supply section of that circuit has failed. Yeah? So that's called as a failure mode. Failure mode is the reason or the component or the process step which has failed. You ask another why question, what you get is actually called a technical root cause. So my power supply section failed because there was a voltage surge. But that's again still not a root cause or a systemic root cause. Why there was a voltage surge in the circuit? We need to find out that. And only when we find out that, we can take some kind of corrective or preventive action. So that's then we go into the domain of design. Can we prevent that surge from happening if it is internally generated? If we cannot prevent, can we at least detect? If we can detect, can we add some kind of a circuit to protect our power supply? It is also a commercial decision because technically it may be possible. But by adding those prevention or detection or mitigation devices, if the cost of the product is going to be not affordable in the market, that decision, that is a call then the marketing department has to take. And there can be again different ways to address that. If you cannot add the additional cost to detect and mitigate this, okay, can we separate the power supply circuit from the motherboard? So in case still this phenomena happens, only circuit which will be damaged is only your power supply board and not the entire board. That could be one strategy. If you still don't want to do that, and suppose it's an industrial product, then can we put this as a sort of installation guideline, and can we tell customer that as a part of installation procedure, you need to give us a circuit, or you need to give us a supply which is maybe add a class C or class D surge suppressor in the circuit, and then only our product will work with that kind of supply. So there will be different ways to address that. So to give one very good example of this 5 why analysis is, so there is a machine which has broken down, and the first why tells you that machine has broken down or stopped working because the fuse has blown. Now, if the electrician, electrician or operator, if he only replaces the fuse, there is every possibility that this phenomena will happen again. So you need to ask a question, why did the fuse blow? Then you get the answer, there was not enough oil in the shaft. Then if you ask the third question again, why there was not enough oil, you get the answer that a pump was not pumping enough oil. You ask a why question again, because the shaft had worn out, so on and so forth, and till finally you get the answer, because the strainer was blocked, with the metal shavings, this is why it was happening. So unless you clean that strainer, which is a corrective action, and unless you come out with a preventive maintenance plan, with what is the mechanism to check that, then only this problem will be permanently solved. And every time we need not be having exactly five times why question asked. Sometimes you may need to ask more than 5. Sometimes you may get to the root cause within less than 5 questions. But typical experience tells that you need to ask this question at least 3 times to get to the proper root cause. If you have jumped to the conclusion in less than 3 why, that's probably still not the root cause. Okay. With this, I'll move to the next technique, and this is called 8D technique and typically used for root cause analysis, and it is based on DMAC methodology. I will not be reading out all that is written here, but if you read, you will find that it is obvious that DMAC methodology is used. And typically, your customers will ask you to submit a report in 8D format whenever they have some quality problem. And this is a industry wide, very well accepted format, and it gives you a very good visual flow to what root cause analysis you have carried out to the customer. There is another version of this which is called A3. It is called A3 because it is typically documented on a A3 size sheet, and this is a Toyota variation. But again, basic methodology is DMAC. And if you see, this is one example of a A3 format, and you will find each section is sort of devoted to D, M, A, or IC. And it is a very intuitive, visual way to tell a story. Once you present something to customer or somebody who is seeing it for the first time, he doesn't have to ask too many questions. The flow is very natural, and person jumps from one box to another, and it is very obvious to him how you have addressed the problem in a very logical, rational, scientific way. The next one is FMEA. So FMEA stands for failure mode effect analysis. We already talked about what is failure mode when we talked about 5i analysis. Effect is the consequences of the failure mode. And typically when we talk about effect, we talk with respect to customer. But it is also okay to talk with respect to internal customers, because FMEA is used either on product or it can also be used on process. So if it is used on product, it is called product FMEA, which is typically used during design phase when product is being designed. Or when it is being used for process, it is called process FMEA. And definitely when you use it for process, most of the time it will be, the effect will be on internal customer, unless your process is customer facing, which could be in a service organization, could be banking, could be insurance, could be call center. So it can be also used in office environment where customer facing processes, if something fails, what will be the impact on the customer? Then we have already seen what is cause and what is root cause, and then what is technical root cause and systemic root cause. Then controls are the methods which can be used or which can be deployed to either prevent, which is preferable way, and if prevention is not possible, then detect and mitigate the effects of those failures. So those are called as controls. And the way FMEA is done is a very sound FMEA for either product or process will typically last for at least few days, maybe 2 days to 4 days. And we use this technique for FMEA. RPN stands for risk probability number, and it is a multiplication of severity. That means severity of the effect or severity of the consequences. Then occurrence is the probability of occurrence, and detection is the probability of detection. Now, some people use a scale of 1 to 5 to categorize each of these three parameters. Some people use 1 to 10. It becomes little complex. I personally prefer 1 to 5 to keep it little simple. And you will notice one thing is severity scale and occurrence scale they are in one direction, whereas detection scale is exactly opposite of severity and occurrence. That means if the weight is 1, that means we can certainly detect that cause of failure. So with this scale, what you will observe is theoretical possible RPN number is 5 into 5 into 5, that is 125. So you do this with current state of your product or process. Then you have to, that's a management call, and there are number of parameters on which it depends. At what score is acceptable to me, and that score acceptability will be different for different companies. Whether you are ready to accept that risk, it will depend on the product, for what purpose that product is being used, its application. Number for consumer product will be different. Number for critical product which are used in automotive or critical infrastructure industry or medical industry will be different. And once that is decided, then you deploy other tools, which I will talk about, like Pokayoke, etc., various improvement action, various controls. Once you come out with a list of controls, you do the FMEA again and come out with this matrix, what will be their values after those controls are deployed. Yeah, and whether now the RPM number falls below your acceptability criteria. So you do this once in the beginning and once at the end to find out whether it has fallen below the acceptability criteria. I'll move to the lean tools now. This is very obvious, nothing much to explain. And it is typically used in the I phase of the DMAT. So before you implement any change, deploy any change, you follow this path, plan, do, then check whether whatever you wanted to achieve, whether you have achieved. If not, take a corrective action. And this is an iterative cycle. So you do it again and again till you get your results. Waste elimination is a lean tool. If you do time and motion study, what we will observe is whatever time which we spend to complete any activity, actually only 5% of the time is on the value added time. Value added time is the one for which customer is ready to pay you money. Yeah. NVA is non-value added time, that is waste, or NNVA is necessary but non-value added, for which customer is not willing to pay you money. And the focus of lean or continuous improvement is basically to attack this 95% of NVA and NNVA. And all this NVA and NNVA is classified into these 8 categories. Defects, we don't have time to literally go through each one of them, but defects, overproduction, waiting, not using employee talent, transportation, inventory, motion, and excess processing are the 8 forms of classical waste which happen in any organization and which are focus of lean and continuous improvement. With this, I'll go to the mistake proofing. Japanese term is Pokayoke, and it literally means to avoid inadvertent errors. And I'll directly show you some examples. And the methodology, underlying methodology is, if possible, eliminate the causes of error. If not, prevent. If not, can we replace it with something else? If that is not possible, at least facilitate the operation so that the mistake does not happen. And if prevention is not possible, then at least either detect and mitigation. So example is barcoding, using barcode to eliminate data entry errors. This is an example of prevention where car cannot hit the wall behind by using stoppers. This is an example of replacement. So where you are using robots to eliminate human errors in welding. This is an example of facilitating. You use different color nozzles for petrol and diesel. This is an example of detection. So in an elevator, you are detecting overload. And this is an example of mitigation, where if everything else fails and if still accident happens, at least it is mitigating the consequences to the passengers. Many more examples are given. This is a plug. This is a hot and cold water tap. This is a medicine organizer which is used for very old people who cannot remember when to take the medicines. SIM card. We have seen the nozzles, the sensors in the elevator door, pressure switch in the lawn mower, different color bins for the waste segregation. These are all examples of Pokayoke. 5S, very simple. Would anybody like to work in an office like this, or would you like to work in an office like this? Yeah. So 5S stands for sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. And basic philosophy of this is to organize your workplace in a nice, happy, which workplace which will avoid any accidents, which will improve the productivity, which will improve the morale of the employee working. It will improve the quality, morale, productivity, improve the yield, etc., etc. Yeah, this is one example of before and after implementing 5S on the drawer. Okay. And the last topic probably is process maps. And there are 4 varieties of process maps, from simple to increasing complexity. And if you want to improve any process, it is first necessary to document the process. And if we all have this experience that we think that process may be something like this, as simple. When you start asking questions to the people, first of all, you will not get a single answer. Each person will describe the process in a different way. And when you really put it on a piece of paper, you will find that your process, which you were thinking is as simple as this, is actually as complex of this. And maybe there are multiple variations in people's head. Yeah. So it is important to document the process. The simplest form is flowchart. And I don't think I need to explain, because every engineer knows what the flowchart is. Yeah, so I'll move to the next version of the flowchart. The only difference between swim lane and flowchart is you add the responsibility, and these are called as swim lanes because they look like the swim lane. So when your process is no longer limited to one department, it is better to use a swim lane chart where you will add who is responsible for each each operation, and also when the process moves, or which are the handover points from one department to another department. So that's a difference between simple flowchart and a swim lane process map. Little more advanced variation of that is called SIPOC. SIPOC stands for supplier input, process output, and customer. Now, supplier and customer here is not a supplier of organization and customers of the organization. What supplier means here is any process has an input and any process has an output. And whoever supplies or whoever provides that input is called supplier in the context of SIPOC diagram. And whoever is a recipient of the output is called customer of the SIPOC diagram. So advantage of SIPOC diagram is, this is one simple example. It tells you whether you are creating any redundant output. It tells you whether whether output which you are creating any process, whether it is being used in that process. If not, in a downstream process. If not, why are you creating it? Second is, are there any output which is created by multiple people? What happens is, see, the people or the departments have little trust in each other. So what happens is we don't trust in the data which is being created by some other department. So each department creates its own database. So such things come out when you create a SIPOC diagram. You will find multiple departments are creating the same output, and then it is better to fix the integrity of that output and who is responsible for creating that output than have multiple people creating that output. So this is how a simple SIPOC diagram looks like. This is a very funny example I have taken, but any process in the organization can be mapped in a CPOC diagram format. And the last one and the most complex is called VSM, which is value stream mapping. And though heavily used on the factory or manufacturing line and continuous manufacturing line, it can also be used in office environment where there are transactional processing in sequence. That means, for example, there is a loan application or credit card application, and that application moves from one person to another person to third person. It can also be used in such kind of environment, or in hospitals or in supermarkets, where there is a possibility of queuing. So VSM will tell you different operations. It will tell you demand from customer. It will tell you your supply chain, at what frequency material is coming. It will show you whether you have any inventory issues. It will show you what is your, at the bottom you can see, what is your value added time and what is your NNVA and NVA time. And when you plot all this, it tells you where are all the inefficiencies in your entire process chain. And I like to give one example which is not from a manufacturing industry. We successfully deployed this VSM technique, and of course Kaizen event has to be triggered. And organizations have a monthly closing, and typically finance department struggles to do the closing. And we brought down the closing time by 50%, which is a huge improvement. Finance department used to take about 8 days. We brought down that closing time to 4 days. And the last one is a Kaizen. Now, Kaizen is actually, it is an event. It can be event, or it can be also considered as a continuous process. You use all the tools, techniques which I have talked about so far to improve small things on daily basis. And that improvement can be on anything. It can be productivity, quality, safety, pack time, or lead time, or it can be a big bang kind of improvement. And the best way to depict Kaizen outcome is, I like to show like before and after kind of thing. So, by simply installing the packing material in a roll form on a stick like this, the packing time was improved from 2 minutes to 1.5 times. Plus, it had a benefit of health or ergonomics on the operator. Operator does not have to bend down and use a force to get the packing material. Here, the wiring was improved, and because of wiring, the safety was improved. See this haphazard wiring over here, and here the neat and clean wiring. Here, the storage conditions of the sheet metal was improved, especially if it is a finished product of cabinets. Let's say if such kind of storage will lead to scratch marks on the doors. So a trolley was created on which these doors can be kept or stored. So I think I have finished, and we still have about 5 minutes for any question and answer. So I'm done, and I'm open for question and answer.
Yeah, participant can unmute and ask their queries, if any, because there is nothing has been there in chat box particularly. So they can unmute.
Yeah, Vasudha sir, excellent presentation. Very simplified content. You made this so-called dull subject very interesting. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
My question is not really a question. It's sort of a query. We always take examples of some very old ancient methods that people have invented. For example, we talk about Ishikawa, we talk about Pareto chart. In some cases, we also take example of Maslow's theory of needs. But these are very ancient methods, but still very, very relevant. I'm more interested in knowing whether are there any recently invented methods or tools which people have started practicing in their environment.
These are very fundamental tools. There are other tools which are, like there is an affinity diagram, there is a decision tree, etc. The tools have remained same. What has changed is the data sophistication has changed. A lot of data can be easily very analyzed now with different tools. Earlier, a lot of to do all this, we had to take a lot of manual efforts. But the data volume has become huge. And apart from these tools, we also monitor failure rate of the products in the field, which is very relevant for the customer. And finally, all these efforts, if you ask me finally which one parameter, okay, people will always talk about customer satisfaction as one, but to the organization, they will see benefit. All this finally should result in the decrease in cost of quality. Because if your quality is improving, your rework will go down, your scrap will go down, your wastage will go down, your warranty claims will go down, your failure rates will go down. Yeah, and final proof of the eating of the pudding is in the cost of quality. So
absolutely,
yeah, so sophisticated tools can be deployed to track and monitor those costs.
I'll supplement to what Vasudev said, Abhiman, that if you change your KPI, now the data available with us are abundant, are huge. We have to twist our questions, we have to twist our KPIs. If you see the scatter diagram that Vasudev showed, the y variable, that the y-axis, all these KPIs, we put the questions in terms of KPIs, and we see our
for these tools, which one to be tried first, or
it is
sharing a stop.
Sharing a stop, yeah. So see, in the define phase, DMAC is the underlying method, and depending on the problem, you have to. So first, once you define the problem, so to define the problem, you need measurements. So measurement, there are these histogram and bar charts, etc., frequency diagrams, etc. Then you prioritize them. Then you use priority chart to decide what are our priorities. Then you use your root cause analysis tool, because you need to know what is the root cause of the problem. So there you use 5i and Ishikawa diagram and all. So during each phase of the DMAC phase, you have to use one of the relevant tools. And that's why I had organized my presentation in that format. So the tools on the left hand side, which in my content sheet, were typically you use in define and measure. Then in the analyze, you use this 5i, Ishikawa, etc. And in the improve phase, you use the lean tools to improve your processes or products. And see, I can tell you when I became head of quality, our cost of quality of that organization was more than 3%. And when I retired, in 4 years, that cost of quality had come down to 0.6%.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great achievement.
They should not have leave you.
Exactly the point. I was about to say that they shouldn't have let you retire.
Yeah. And see, this is actually many small scale industries, they think that deploying quality is actually cost. They cannot afford. Yeah, they cannot hire people. They cannot have the instruments and tools and techniques. But actually, it reduces the cost on long term, because cost of poor quality is much more than cost of good quality.
Many times we focus